Good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining us tonight for our Boundaries 101 session. And just as an intro to this talk tonight, what's prompted this is just myself and my wife as parents. We are currently going through this. I've got two boys that are 10 and 11, and just our experiences with them thus far with technology and us trying to navigate this as a family. And then just over the previous years, my previous years in teaching, working with boys and various pupils in the schools that I've been in high schools that I've been in, I've encountered some difficult situations and scary situations at times. And I've often wondered, well, if we had to just go back to the beginning of the story, could we have maybe changed this? Could the outcome have been different? And so that was the motivation with this talk tonight. Just as I don't want it to come across as though I'm against technology. So just to say I'm not against technology, but or smartphones or games. My son yesterday said, please, Dad, please don't stop all my friends from being able to play games after this talk. So I'm not against games, but I view technology as you would petrol, for example, where it's very useful when used in the right way, but when used incorrectly, it can be extremely dangerous and the outcome can be disastrous at times. So I believe we need to educate our children as early as possible to make wise choices. So that is what our talk is about tonight. Okay, so these are the topics I'm going to be speaking on tonight. Now, there's a lot more to be spoken about in terms of smartphones, technology. There's lots of apps out there, many of which you might not be aware of, that I'm not aware of. So these are common things that have come up. And so I'm going to chat about these tonight. And maybe at a later stage, we'll have another talk about more specific aspects of each of these, or about some other apps that we encounter with our boys. Okay, so I'm going to start off with gaming, and most of you, I'm sure your sons already play games. And I think just in researching this, the gaming industry it's a massive industry. It makes a lot of money every year, and a lot of research goes into it, a lot more than you probably think, because a lot of the time our view is of games how they were when we were younger, where they weren't that professionally done. There wasn't as much thought and research into them. So the gaming world, it is an industry, and they are out to make as much money as possible. And just to view it as that, I think is important. That games nowadays, they've been carefully developed. They look at the latest findings in human psychology and behavior when developing these games. And there's a reason why people find them so addictive. It's because companies have invested heavily into understanding and incorporating what most interests and engage customers, and what activities and results will release the most dopamine in our brains. And if you just maybe ponder that for a moment and think about how ethical is it for our kids, if these games are being marketed to our kids, how ethical is it if that's the way they're being developed to be most efficient in hooking them and keeping them addicted? So an example of this, and if I had money for every time I sat in a high school parents' evening, and a parent would tell me, my son spends a lot of time playing games, and he's really good at playing games, and he's so good that he actually thinks he might be able to make this a profession one day. And that's really interesting. So just listen to this. So Fortnite, that's one of the games, and there's other games that have the same thing. They have something that's specifically designed called the mastery loop, and it encourages players to keep playing. So a mastery loop, we have this in all activities that we're involved in. It's a human desire to acquire new skills and increase our ability to perform those skills and to perform them well. And we derive satisfaction from that. So games like Fortnite will hook that mastery loop that they encourage that sensation of doing well at something. And, so we like winning, we like being good at things, and games allow players to experience that over and over and over again. So it makes you actually feel better when you play them. And the scary thing is a lot of the games are designed, by design, they minimize failure. So you don't actually experience failure. And there's always incremental success. So you feel like you're so good at this. And your success is then celebrated and maximized, no matter how insignificant. And it's designed to create an exaggerated perception of your value and uniqueness. So it's crazy that the games have been designed to actually accentuate that feeling, and that is what makes them so addictive. And that's why so many parents would have heard their son say, I'm really good at this, and I think I might actually be able to do this as a job. So interesting if you've heard that. The other thing is that your son's world is different because of gaming. So a lot of the time we don't understand this, and you might have experienced this already. So Fortnite, Roadblocks, and some of the other online community games, they're much more than just a game for your sons. It's a social network, and that's what makes it so difficult when you make decisions about these things, because you don't want to stop your friends from having that social network. It's so difficult. So friends gather together, they play together, and new friends are made online. So the reality there is actually what your sons are looking for is friendship. And maybe we've got to just take a step back and give them alternatives that they're not deriving or making friends online, that rather they're actually making friends in person. Just as an example, I remember a couple of years back, I think it was 2017, and some of the matric boys, I spoke to them the week after their valedictory, and I said, "Oh, what did you guys do after valedictory?" I'm thinking that maybe they went out and they went to someone's house, they had a party or something like that. That's what we would have done. And they said, "No, sir, we went home and we played Fortnite together, and that was that." So the world is very different because of gaming, and at times we don't understand. Okay, so just throughout this presentation, I'm going to give some practical advice, and then at the end, I'll give some sort of global advice. So this is just some practical advice on gaming specifically. So the first thing is not all screen time is created equally. So not all screen time has the same impact on us. So if you think of TV versus gaming, gaming is far more intensive and strenuous to our brains. So hours spent gaming compared to hours spent watching TV, they have a different net effect. So it's to remember that and to be mindful of it. Then not all brains are equally affected by media. So younger kids, games and media have a more, I'm going to say, strenuous effect on their brains, and the time spent online or on media needs to be minimized for them because they actually just can't handle that. So a helpful rule of thumb that I found here for this, because you don't know how much time must I let my son play games for. So a helpful rule of thumb here is multiply their age by 5 minutes to determine the time spent online. So if you do that, a 4-year-old's exposure should be no more than 20 minutes at a time. Whereas a 10-year-old, that would be 50 minutes. So that's a good rule of thumb. It's not, what I like about that, it's not ridiculous. We're not saying you don't play games ever, but 10-year-old, you're spending 50 minutes at a time, and then you stop and have a break. And maybe the next day you're doing the same thing. It's just to prevent that sort of where they go down the rabbit hole and play for hours on end, which is just not good for them. An important thing there as well is also just to pay attention to your son, pay attention to how they react when they've played games for a long time. So kids react differently to this. I know my two sons, if they play games, there's a different effect. And if I say to them, you have to stop, there's a different reaction from both of them. And they're a year and a half apart in age. And so it's very interesting to notice that. And you might have to adjust your set of rules accordingly, just judging by their reaction. Then not all media within the same type are created. So if you think of addictive power versus passivity in a game, so if you're playing something like Fortnite, which is very interactive, very engrossing, in relation to something like Solitaire. Solitaire is very slow moving. So something that's a lot more intensive, you might need to have less time. Whereas something that's less intensive, like Solitaire, you can play for longer. It's the same with TV. If you look at modern day TV, and then even if you look at a series like The Avengers, if you go back to the first Avengers movies and you look at them, the special effects are far less hectic. They don't look as real, whereas the most recent ones are far more realistic, and you get pulled in even more by them. So it's just to be aware of that. The type of game that they're playing, that would also dictate as to the amount of time that they're going to play. And then not all media is beneficial. So we've got to teach our kids to make wise choices, because ultimately, at the end of this, you want them, they're going to grow up and they're going to have to make their own choices, or you're not going to be around and they have to make their own choices. So it's like fishing, and they need to know how to fish, but also how to throw back the attractive but poisonous fish that won't be good for them. So we just got to get to a point where they can make good choices for themselves ultimately in the end as they grow up. And then just the last thing on gaming. So all gaming consoles have parental controls. So if you're not aware of that, please go online, research the parental controls that they do have, and implement them. So there's all types of controls that you can put in place, so that you can control what your sons are able to download and play. Okay. Just as an aside, as we go into the next one. So I had a big argument with my parents-in-law. They didn't believe me that the boys, like the sort of addictive power of games. So eventually we came to an agreement and said, look, the boys, if you'll allow them just to play for a short time the next morning after they'd slept over. So they told my boys this, they dutifully told them this. And my one son woke them up at 3 o'clock in the morning and said, it's morning now, I want to play. And then they actually, the next day, they said, sure, okay. So I'll speak a bit about that later as well, is that children react differently. It's just to be aware of that. Right. So our next one is pornography. And the stats on this are absolutely terrifying. I know when I read this, it's bewildering. And I just hope as parents and as people in education, we can try protect our sons from this. And that would be my aim with actually giving this talk, is just to protect them, that they don't encounter these and they don't become a statistic like you see that. So, I mean, the first one, 90% of children age 8 to 16 have seen online pornography. So for those teachers who are on that teach 8-year-olds, think of your class, think that that perhaps 90% have seen this, encountered this online. Another scariest one, the largest group of internet porn consumers are children aged 12 to 17, and that 70% of kids, we well-meaning parents, we allow our children access to the internet to do homework research, and they encounter things that we just really don't want them to encounter at a young age. So it's just to be so careful of that. And so just I think to be aware of those stats, that's the first thing. And then what to do. to be aware and actually be able to do something. So just as an example here, another teacher that I know in a school that has a lot more technology than our school currently does, and their school has firewall and they've got filters, and so she was busy with the lesson and decided the kids were searching for pictures of fishing lures, and something popped up on her screen that was completely inappropriate, but she had searched for fishing lures. And it's almost like the internet at times, without being a conspiracy theorist, it's like there's like a magnet, and you're guaranteed at some point to find something that you just shouldn't. So just err on the side there of being stricter, I think. Just some practical advice. And I heard this quite a while ago. Anything that you let into your home, you've got to be willing to manage or police. So you need to have some way to check up on your sons and to make sure that they only have access to what you want them to have access to. So I think in particular, younger guys, you need to have very strict control of what they can access. And then a helpful thing is to understand that the online world is a place. It's an abstract thing. It's an abstract place. So we don't think of it as a place. So South Africans, we hyper vigilant actually. So we're very careful. You drive around. I think of if I go to the shops and we're getting in the car, I don't get into the car until my family's in the car, because I don't want to be in the car and something happen and I'm stuck inside the car. So we're hyper vigilant, but we're not when it comes to being online, because we don't think of it as a place where there are very real dangers. So we think our sons are inside, they're safe, they're sitting on the couch maybe in our lounge, so they're safe. But the reality is when they're online, they are in a place that can be very unsafe for them. So if you're able to think of it like that, I find it helpful that you can then put boundaries in place to protect them. You think, how many of you would leave your sons at home alone? Sure, no one. How many of you would let them just sort of walk to the shops on their own? No one. So why are we allowing them into a dangerous place on their own without any supervision, without any help, actually? So that was helpful to me. And then as I said, err on the side of being stricter. Sorry, I skipped one there, but I'll go back to that one. Just rather be stricter, start off stricter, and you can become more lenient with time, but rather be stricter at the beginning until you are happy with the controls that you have in place. And then, we're in a race, I feel, to speak to our sons first. So I was reading a book called Moolman on parenting and on being a good husband. And this is one of the things that the author spoke about, that it's a race to speak to your sons first about. So you might not want to have this talk. I didn't want to, but I did after I read the book. So to speak to my sons about sex. Because if I don't, they might be part of that 90% that sees pornography first, and then that is their first encounter with sex and with sexuality. And I don't want someone else defining sex and sexuality to my sons first. I want to be able to have that conversation first and to guide them in that. So it was probably the most embarrassing conversation I've had. My sons still talk about it every now and again and say how embarrassing it is. But we've had the talk, and at least I feel they know now they can speak to me about these things. So it's no matter how embarrassing it is for us, at least they know they can have that conversation. It just opens the dialogue for them. So I really would. So this author actually said at the age of 7, you should have this talk with your son or your daughter. And I know that so the teachers here are looking at me and going, sure. But think about that. If they're seeing something online that it could shape what sexuality and sex means for them going forward. And you don't want that. You want them to have a normal and a healthy life. So rather earlier than later. Then I really think this is so good, just as practical advice. So you give them a process. So you tell them, if you encounter something online that makes you feel uncomfortable, anything, you put down the device. So you close the computer, you put down your phone, and you come and tell me. And that's part of that open dialogue. You come and tell someone. And then no digital secrets. So even as adults, that's really good advice. There shouldn't be digital secrets. And again, if you think of the internet as a place, in the real world, are you keeping secrets? You shouldn't be. So the internet is a place, there shouldn't be digital secrets either. Can then give them practice. So those 2 steps need to be drilled over and over and over again. You think of, we tell kids, don't speak to strangers over and over again. Don't go near a dodgy looking car, no matter what the people say. We need to do the same with these types of things. We need to drill this into them, that if they feel uncomfortable, put the device down and come and tell someone immediately. And then give permission. So this is not give them permission to do anything. So hopefully you'll remember this because of that. But give them permission to tell you what's happening. And I think that's probably the biggest thing, is that there's shame because they know immediately. It's so funny. They don't have to be taught that what they've seen is wrong. They know instinctively, because we are moral beings, because we have a moral nature, they know that it's wrong. And they will try to hide it because they're scared of getting in trouble. And it's to draw that into them, that they can come and tell you no matter what they've seen, no matter what has happened, they can come and tell you, so that you can keep that communication, those communication lines open. The last thing you want is your son's hiding something from you and you finding out years down the line or months down the line that something's been going on, because they were too scared to tell you, because they were scared they were going to get in trouble. And so I had a similar situation with one of my sons, and he saw something he shouldn't have at a friend's house, and the conversation he had with his brother, I heard, and I thought, like something's happened, I need to speak to him. And then my wife said to me, she also heard something, you need to speak to him. So, and it took, I promise you, so I've had experience in dealing with teenagers in discipline issues, and where you've got to get the truth out of kids. And I had to use every trick in the book to get the truth out of him. And it was just simply because he was scared to tell me, because he thought he was going to get in trouble. He hadn't done anything wrong. It wasn't his fault, but he thought he's going to get in trouble. So really, stick to these 3 steps and keep speaking to them all the time about things. So if you have that talk with them, I think that's the first step. You have the first talk with them about what sex is. And that then opens that dialogue, that they know that no matter what, they can come and speak to you about anything that they encounter. Okay, and then just with this, if your sons have access to the internet somehow, so whether you've got a computer at home that they can use, or a tablet or a phone that they have maybe at this stage already, you need to have age-appropriate filters, so filtering software. You need to monitor what they are doing as well, so you need to see. They shouldn't be sitting in a room on their own online. They should be with you, and you probably, primary school kids, you should be on the internet with them, sitting with them the whole time, I would say. And then having accountability conversations with them. Okay. Right. WhatsApp, everyone's favorite. Okay, I'm not going to go through these stats and read them for yourself, but there's also scary stats on this. And WhatsApp is a big problem because of the permanence of what's sent. Once it's sent, it's there and it's accessible. Even if if you delete it, someone else might have accessed it already. And there's such terrible stories about those sort of things happening. Just as an example of something that I encountered, is that so there's boys at a prominent boys' school. I'm not going to say which one. It's not ours. Um, had a WhatsApp group where all majority of the boys, or a large number of the boys in the school, were sharing nude and semi-nude pictures of teenage girls that they had coerced into sending pictures to them. So they had this group, and then they would trick these girls into sending them pictures, and then they would just send to all their friends, and it would be a big joke. And the, besides the damage that that causes to those girls, that's someone's daughter. I know that's going to be someone's mom. That the damage that it causes to them. The other big problem is that if they're underage, they're actually distributing child pornography. So those girls, they could actually be charged for distributing child pornography, and the parents who own those phones can actually be charged, because if you own the phone, you are liable for what's happening on the phone. And that's why phones, you'll see later on, phones are, they can be such a dangerous tool. They're a two-edged sword. They can cut both ways. So, that's a really bad story. And then just on another level, in dealing with high school boys, if I think back to when I was in high school and I wanted to speak to a girl that I liked, I had to pick up the phone, and really take a deep breath, phone her number, and hope her dad didn't answer the phone. And many times the dad did answer the phone, and then they would say, who do you want to talk to? That doesn't happen anymore with WhatsApp. And very often, I remember sitting in class and you'd see, and it's quite innocent actually a lot of the time. The boys would say, a girl had responded to them, and then they would say to their friend, well, what must I say back? So there's a group of them, and it's really innocent. They're not trying to do anything bad, but it's just that I thought, they're missing out on that skill of actually, first of all, plucking up the courage to speak to someone yourself, and then secondly, the skill of knowing what to say and learning what to say, and that innocence that comes with it is kind of lost, and that we've got to get back to that. We want them to have that skill to interact in an appropriate way with each other and with girls. So just be aware of that with WhatsApp. So just some practical tips there. So the other day, my son doesn't have a smartphone, and so he's on a group on my wife's phone that with his friends. It's not all the boys in the grade or anything like that, but they were on their way to a cricket game, and there was a delay with the bus. There was a problem with the bus. So in half an hour, they sent each other 400 messages. So I don't know about you, but my brain could not cope with reading 400 messages. So I just question whether that's good. They can't regulate themselves, and they're not at an age where they can. And I don't think that amount of information, having to try process it, is good. So you've got to look at the time that they're going to spend online and decide what's appropriate for them. So, if I think of conversations I had with high school boys, and I would ask them, how much time are you spending on WhatsApp in a day? And many of them would say the whole day. I'm online the whole day. So you are accessible the whole day. And if you work and you've got a lot of people speaking to you via email or WhatsApp, and you will know that at the end of the day, you're tired after having so many people trying to access you or having to respond to so many people. So is that something you want to be doing to your child at this stage? That's a question you need to ask yourself. The simplest thing with this, I would say, is delay getting a smartphone as long as possible. And I'll speak more about that later on. Then, the old saying, nothing good happens after 12. So that's an old saying. And the same applies with phones. Your son should not, under any circumstances, be taking their phones to bed at night with them. They will not go to sleep, I promise you. So, as many high school teachers will attest, to boys falling asleep in class because they were up all night on YouTube or speaking to people. and you don't want your sons to start developing habits now that make them do that. So take their phones away. You keep their phone at night. It's a good time for you also to check their phone and to make sure that nothing inappropriate is happening. Right. Then I've just included these three all together. So YouTube Shorts, for those of you who don't know, it's basically the YouTube version of TikTok, and just the stream of videos playing. And TikTok, most of you will know what that is, and then Netflix, which I'll speak about. So YouTube Shorts and TikTok, I would equate that to trying to get a drink of water from a fire hydrant. So you want a bit of entertainment, and you just get inundated. And it's another thing where I just don't think it's good for your brain. It's, the next video is coming up, the next video is coming up, and the next thing you look and you've wasted 3 hours. Okay, so it's to be able to control that. And it's what these things do is they designed to get quickly get your attention, and then to give you instant gratification. So they want to keep you engaged the whole time, and your brains get a hit of dopamine with it. So just as an aside, Netflix, interestingly enough, they said their greatest opposition to their success as a business is sleep. So if you've ever wondered why, when you're watching an episode, the next episode quickly comes on, and if you want to stop, you've got to like frantically make it stop. It's because of that, because actually they don't want you to stop. They want you to keep watching. And I think it's just to change maybe the perspective and realize that these are businesses and they're trying to sell something. And the more that they keep you online, the more that they keep you watching, the more money they're making. And if you realize that is the background to what they're doing, you'll look at it maybe with a more balanced view, which will be good for your sons. So a lot of these apps, they have age restrictions. So if you as a parent are the primary user, then you can set those age restrictions in place. And they're there for a good reason. So TikTok especially, YouTube's not too bad, but TikTok especially, a lot of what is on TikTok is not age appropriate at all. So if your sons are on TikTok, please go tonight and sit and watch what is on TikTok that they are able to access. And I guarantee you within a few minutes, you'll be shocked as to what comes up. Because even though there are parental controls with these things, a lot of the time inappropriate content and language will slip through the filters. Or I don't know with TikTok if it's even allowed through the filters, but TikTok is shocking. I don't think any primary school boys should be on TikTok at all. That's just my opinion. And maybe you go watch for yourself and you tell me what you think. But yeah, I've had a lot of feedback from parents who've been shocked when they've seen. And then the same goes for Netflix. Netflix, it's very well marketed. It's slick. It's professional. So you kind of get the feeling like it's all clean cut, but it's not really. And there's also the same thing. There are parental filters or parental controls that are there, and they're there for a very good reason, and you need to put those in place for your sons. Otherwise, they will be watching stuff that is completely inappropriate for them to be watching. And even when you do that, inappropriate stuff will slip through, and you have to be aware of that. So my solution to that is you should be watching things with your sons. So it's so difficult, I know. So I find I get to the end of the week and I'm very tired on a Friday, and you kind of want to just clutch out yourself. So you may be sitting on your phone and your son's watching TV, but maybe they're watching TV in their room. And what are they actually watching? If you don't have parental controls on Netflix, you think it's fine. There's nothing untoward on Netflix, but do yourself a favor and just check on what your son is actually watching. So something we've done in our house is, you might think I'm crazy, but we don't watch TV in the week. We're too busy for that, and I've encouraged my sons to get outside to play sports and do their homework as much as possible. and I think that's good. It's healthy. And then on a Friday night, we sit down and we watch a movie together. So they really look forward to it. They're really excited every Friday. Um, we have we call it Friday night movie night. We used to do it the old school way. We used to go to the DVD store and rent a DVD, pre-Netflix, and yeah, it's a nice tradition, and they love it, and it's good family time together. So that's something maybe to think about. And they really, I know my boys really look forward to that time together, and they appreciate it. And when we miss it, they're disappointed. So, and it's such a nice way for us to also monitor what they're watching. So we will watch something with them. If something comes up, which sometimes it does, something inappropriate might pop up, but I'm with them, and we can have a discussion about it. And it's a teachable moment where we can say, like, that wasn't actually right. So use that time together. That's quickly gone. Okay, then these are the sort of umbrella solutions that I would suggest. And the first one is delay social media as long as possible. So there's been so much research into this, and there's a growing concern or idea amongst various parties that if you look at some of the lawsuits that have happened, that have started to happen against big social media companies, that actually social media might go the way of cigarettes, with the tobacco companies who eventually got sued by so many people because they've hidden the truth about the actual impact of social media on human beings. And so they're trying to kind of backtrack if you look at some of the controls and the warnings that are now being put in place. But just an interesting thing. So there's a journalist, Nancy Jo Sales, and she wrote a book called American Girls, and it's about social media and the secret lives of teenagers. And there she speaks, there's a conversation that she had with a teen girl who said to her, she admitted to her that social media was destroying her life. So she said to her, why don't you just stop? Why don't you go offline? And this girl responded, because then I would have no life. So it's this paradox. So where they know that it's harmful or it's hurting them or making them feel terrible, but their whole life is online. So how do you disconnect? So that's why I'd say for your sons, delay social media as long as possible. The social media thing could be another whole talk on its own, the impacts of it, the dangers. So I would just say, young boys, they don't have to be on social media. They don't. If I look at school, I promise you, they are very happy running around, talking to each other in person. COVID proved that to us. They were so unhappy when they couldn't interact normally. So being able to interact face to face and play is so healthy for them. So rather encourage that and delay the social media thing. Then the second point is, it's a sticky one, because I know if I look at school, a lot of boys already have smartphones. But my take on this is delay them as long as possible. And the reason I say that is once you've got a child has a phone, that's a smartphone, that's connected to the internet. So they've got data. Your control is zero. You can have all the parental controls in place in terms of what they can access on the internet. So you can have those controls on their smartphone. But how do you control what they get on WhatsApp? And there aren't really controls for that at the moment. So it's very difficult once they have a smartphone and they have data to control what they have access to. And even if you have parental controls in place on their phone, if they are smart enough, or they know maybe someone older who's smart enough, they can find a way around it, even on your Wi-Fi. So that's why I say delay smartphones as long as possible. I told my sons they're getting smartphones when they're 30. And so I joke with them, but they've actually started to believe that I'm only going to give them phones when they're 30. But yeah, I don't think in primary school it's necessary that they have a smartphone. If you're worried about, how will they get hold of me, you can buy them a dumb phone that can just text and call. and that's perfect. That's all that they actually need it for, with a few numbers on, so they can get hold of you. If another option is to get, you get the smart watches that don't have access to the internet, but they have a few numbers on that you can load on, like 5 numbers, and those also have GPS on them, so you can pinpoint where they are if you're concerned about those sort of things. And those, I think, are better ways for younger boys. Just you protect them from a lot of the things that we've just spoken about, and don't have to police something or bring something into your home that you have to police unnecessarily. Then, just so on that as well, with smartphones, if you think of some other apps like Snapchat, there's not filters for that. And it's horrific what people can send each other. They've got, what Snapchat allows is that the image that you've sent or the message that you sent is only available for a short time, and then it disappears. So that's kind of a get out of jail free card for people, and they send terrific things. So they throwaway selfies, they're called. And those you can't protect your kids from if they've got a smartphone, those sort of things. Okay, then just in your home, take control of the Wi-Fi. You don't have to have Wi-Fi on all the time. And so I did say at the beginning, I'm not a technophobe, but up until COVID, I didn't have Wi-Fi at home. I chose not to have it at home, and it was actually so good. I had to get Wi-Fi at home because of my job and having to be online last year with COVID. And it's something now that I have to police. So it's another thing that I have to police. So I kind of wish COVID hadn't have happened to make me make the change. But the important thing is there that you control it. You can control through your Wi-Fi router. You can control what your kids are able to connect to, and there's different apps that you can do that with. Which, if you just Google those, ironically, that's one of the benefits of the internet is there is good information out there. So if you just Google, there are good solutions for your home and even for if your son has a smartphone, and that you can put onto their phone or have on your Wi-Fi, that you can actually control the Wi-Fi. You can control who connects at what times, etc. So those are useful. And then, so number 5, to scaffold technology over the years. So you don't have to give your son a smartphone off the bat, and that's an important thing. The smartphone you should view almost as, it's like giving your kids the car keys at that point. You've taught them the rules of the road. They've ridden a bicycle. Maybe they walked on the road first with you. You've taught them those rules. Then they've ridden a bicycle. And they've ridden in the car with you. They've got their learner's license. And then eventually, once they've got their driver's license, then they get the keys to the car and they drive on the road on their own. And you've got to have the same view of technology. You don't want to just give them everything. You don't want to give them the keys to the car at the beginning. They need to first learn skills to protect themselves and everyone else around them before they just get given the keys to the car. So that's something in your home. Have a conversation and decide at what age, so at what point do your kids first encounter technology. So when will you allow them to have access to certain apps on a tablet? When will you allow them to have access to the internet to do projects? At what age? Maybe at 10 you decide to do that. When can they start searching for things on Google with you obviously in the same room? Maybe that's something you do 10 to 12. What about when will they be allowed to get onto social media? So maybe at 12 they can introduce Facebook at that point, something that's simple to monitor with a select group of friends. Then at what age will you give the capstone, which is the smartphone? Maybe that's at 15, 16, 17. Now, some of you sitting there might be thinking I'm crazy saying that. I'm hoping after what the stats that you heard earlier, maybe you change your mind. Maybe some of you are sitting there going, but hang on, I've already given my son a smartphone. Okay, so what do we do about that then? So I'll get to that. So the advantage of the scaffolding is you can stretch this out as you see your son is handling the situation or what they've been, the responsibility they've been given well. So if you see, okay, they're doing the right thing with the responsibility that you're giving them, you can say, okay, I can give you a little bit more responsibility and a little bit more freedom, but don't give them all the freedom from the beginning. That would be, if you take one thing like home from that point, is don't give them all the freedom from the beginning. And some kids might be able to move along, like kind of graduate quicker, but others you might have to kind of accordion out the steps over a longer period of time. But it's very difficult once you've given them the keys to the car to take them back. So that's tough if you have already. But just to remind you, like once you've given them a smartphone and mobile data, they have access to pretty much anything. And it just seems, like I said at the beginning, bad things will find them. It's almost like it's inevitable. If you search for anything on Google and bad stuff's come up, you'll know that. Okay, so then number 6, as a blanket rule, so all ages and all devices, keep screens out of your bedroom. So that even goes for us as adults. Rather, don't get into the habit of lying in your bed and seeing on Instagram before you're about to go to bed. And if you can teach them that from a young age, that there is that separation. We do need that separation, and we do need time off of devices. I think most of us spend a lot of our day on computers and on phones. It's good to actually have that disconnect, that we have time away from being online. It's also a good way, just if you think that maybe your son struggles with gaming, like a gaming addiction, and being able to disconnect, or struggles with WhatsApp, there is a cutoff so that they do disconnect for a while. So that's a very good rule. And if I think back to when I was in the high school, many issues that I had to deal with where things happened on WhatsApp, it was at night when kids were alone in their bed with their phone. Parents don't know what's going on. So if you keep this blanket rule, you can avoid those things. And then for the parents that have already given their sons a smartphone, maybe, this is a good option. You can write a smartphone contract. So you can discuss with your sons what is appropriate. Maybe after this talk, you want to sit and discuss with your wife in your home or with your husband what is appropriate. What do we think is good for our sons and for our son? And make a decision on that, and then write a contract and discuss it with your son. That's fair. So if you think of practically in the physical world, you know, as kids grow up, they have a curfew, as they give them more freedom. Same thing with the phone. Have the same things. You should have your kids, your son's login info for their phones, Facebook, if any of them are on Facebook, Instagram, anything like that. So apps that they're on, you should have that login info. You are the parent. So you need to have that information so you can check up on it. And that can be part of your contract. It's never too late to have a smartphone contract with your sons. Even your 21-year-old son, Mrs. Diesel. Okay. And then you got to watch how each child responds to the digital age. So my 2 sons are very different, and our one son is very taken by technology, and he enjoys technology, and he has an aptitude for it, and he can just figure things out, and so that's good. But I've also got to monitor what he does a bit more carefully than his brother, because his brother's not really interested. So you've got to just be aware that different people react differently, and then might have to adjust your rules accordingly. And then we've all sat at a restaurant and maybe looked at a family with everyone on their phones at the same time at the family, and you think, what are they doing? you're supposed to be out enjoying the time together. So it's to be purposeful about that as a family. You've got to disconnect and then reconnect in person. So redeem meals, actually spend the meals together. Don't have any technology around when you're having meals. Car trips, same thing. The worst thing, I hated seeing teenagers with their earphones in and everyone just driving insular on their own in the car. So car trips are a time when you can talk. In the mornings on the way to school, you can chat to each other on the way home. When you go away on holiday, you don't have to be on your phone or on a tablet. Actually, let your kids enjoy the scenery. Look at where they're going. And then holidays are a very good time. Put your phone away for everyone. You don't have to spend time online. The point there is actually to spend time together and enjoy those times. As parents, we have such a short time with our kids, and you want to maximize that time. If they're online, they are not with you. They're with other people, or they are engrossed in a game, and you want to maximize that time together. I was thinking the other morning, my sons were rushing to get to work, and I was busy and feeling stressed about the day, and my one son was making a big noise, and I was getting quite irritated, and my wife said to me, in a few years' time, the house is going to be quiet. And that just, it hits home. So yeah, in a few years' time, your house is also going to be quiet, and maybe your kids won't be with you on holiday. So enjoy the time together, maximize it. Then there's just 2 points on this that I haven't added in. So, or one more, sorry, that communication is key. You got to know your children, take an interest in their online activity, speak to them about what they're playing, who they're playing with, and allow them to build a relationship of trust with you so that they're able to tell you when they're in trouble or when they encounter something that makes them feel uncomfortable. And then it also helps you because you will identify very quickly then if their behavior changes. And that, if you can then find out why. You can ask them why, what's going on. And then just remember, you're the parent. So monitor their devices. You own those devices, and it's your responsibility to monitor them. Check through their photos, messages, and videos regularly. It's not a fail-safe, but they will think twice because there's some accountability there for them. And then these are just my bonus solutions. So this is in my home. Okay, so I have a predetermined filter that I run everything through. And so I'm not perfect, and I'm not attesting to be perfect, but this is what I try to do and I strive to do. So Philippians 4 verse 18. So the verse goes, whatever is pure, right, noble, lovely, admirable, think on these things. So if I run games through that filter, what I'm watching on Netflix through that filter, what will I watch? And I need to be particularly mindful of that with my children because you want to be in a good example to them. So have a predetermined filter in your house that you run things through. And then the other thing is opportunity cost. As I was saying, we have limited time with our sons, and soon your house will be quiet. So is that the best use of your time together? Is it the best use of my time, me sitting on the couch looking at my phone while my sons play video games? I've got to ask myself that question. Maybe not. Maybe it's better if I'm outside playing cricket with them, no matter how tired I feel I am. And so that's a challenge maybe to everyone out there and to myself to grab the opportunity of the time that we have together. Think of how much you love your children and just soak it in, enjoy it, because soon it will be gone. And then these are just some references. So the first two are just articles that you can have a look at, and these will be available on this presentation if you want to have a look at those. Then the cyber safety consulting one, that's just a podcast from an author. I can't remember, I think her name's Liz Redkin, and she does online security in the US. And she's quite a well-known speaker. She has some really good podcasts on online security, bit scary to listen to actually, but very good. And then Covenant Eyes, Protect Young Eyes, those are two websites that you can have a look at. They've got blogs on them as well that give information on new apps, trends that are happening online with children to protect children, just giving parents information, and they're very useful. So have a look at those. They also have apps there, online filtering apps that you can subscribe to that are very useful. And then just Apple is probably one of the more ethical tech companies, I feel. And they're actually the only company currently that's bringing in filtering software for apps like WhatsApp. So they're actually introducing those soon. And they've got a lot of child safety like applications that you can implement. So have a look at those, and those are a good option in terms of a product that you use Apple products, because your sons could be a bit more secure and you can control things a bit better. Okay, that brings us to the end. So I don't know if there's any questions. Okay, so there was one question where that so this will be available on the school. Okay, so Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. It will be available on all three platforms. So it is there, and you can watch it again. Okay. But I'd just like to say thank you very much for taking the time. For those of you online, for taking the time to listen to this. And then just know that from our side, we want the very best for your sons, and we want them to grow up to be upstanding men one day. And this is a part of it. It is a massive challenge that we are all facing, both as parents and as educators, and we need to work hand in hand to protect them. And that's our goal at school. And I hope that you would have found this useful, and that on your side, you can put some measures in place to make sure that your sons are safe. Okay. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your evening.